Mister, you found her, mister.
Oh, I found her all right.
Come here, girl. Come to daddy. Oh, you're so beautiful. So strong, yet such a lady. I long to hold you. I missed you so much.
You got problems, friend?
Oh, I ain't got no problems, not now that she's back with me. Oh, I remember a cold night that we spent together. Every night's been cold without you, my sweet thing. Oh.
I thought I was sick in the head.
I told you he was funny, mister. Life out here does that to people.
Oh.
I should know. My daddy kept goats.
Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. So here we are, Red Dead Redemption, the last big franchise from Rockstar Games left to cover on my channel. Actually, there's still Midnight Club and some other one-off games that they published like Oni. Well, whatever, I'll get around to those too. When Red Dead Redemption was first released back in 2010, it felt like such a breath of fresh air in the gaming market. Yeah, there were plenty of cowboy and western games that came out before it, including its predecessor, Red Dead Revolver, but none were quite as ambitious or to this scale. I hate to oversimplify it, but the idea of GTA, but with cowboys, just kinda sells itself. A big open sandbox that lets you explore the Old West, where you take a horse everywhere instead of a car, can choose to be honorable or immoral, get into shootouts with bandits or the law. What's not to love? Since I hadn't quite come to terms with how I felt about Grand Theft Auto 4 back when it was released, Red Dead Redemption was my favorite game to come from Rockstar Games for a while. And especially when they dropped their excellent DLC, Undead Nightmare. And when it finally got a new game and prequel in 2018, I was through the moon to return to this setting and its characters. Though I haven't played the original since before Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, so let's cut the usual intro short, and hop into the game to see if it still holds up almost 15 years later. Red Dead Redemption begins with our lead, John Marston, arriving in the city of Blackwater, before boarding a train bound for the town of Armadillo. John is a former outlaw that once ran with the infamous Vanderlyn gang back when he was younger. The group was known all across the West for their criminal exploits and various high-profile bank robberies. But as the years went by, the gang would slowly fall apart, their leader Dutch would go crazy, and eventually John would turn his back on being a criminal in order to settle down to the life of a rancher alongside his wife Abigail and their son Jack. Unfortunately, their peaceful life was disrupted when Edgar Ross, the chief of the Bureau of Investigation, came knocking at his home to recruit him for a job, to hunt down the remaining members of his old gang. And to ensure that John does as he's told, the Bureau are holding his family hostage until the job is done. With the safety of his loved ones on the line, John has no choice but to become a government lapdog. There's more I want to say about him and his past, but I'll have to save it for later. Also, while I'll reference certain things from Red Dead Redemption 2, I won't be discussing too much of it, as I want to evaluate this game's story on its own merits, and separate from the things added in the prequel. Arriving in Armadillo, John meets up with his local contact Jake. Hired by the local marshal on a request of the feds, Jake is here to lead him to his first target, Bill Williamson. Once part of the US Army before he was dishonorably discharged, Bill would join the Vanderlyn gang after trying to rob Dutch. After everyone in the gang went their separate ways, Bill formed his own gang and set up his base of operations at Fort Mercer, an abandoned military stronghold. Due to the fort's great defenses, the marshal and local militia have been unsuccessful in stopping Bill's reign of terror. So John tries some diplomacy when he arrives, asking his old friend to surrender peacefully. It goes about as well as you'd expect.
Bill, I implore you think about this.
You implore me? You implore me. You always were one for fancy words. Oh. Well, things are different now, John. Now I'm in charge! No more Dutch! And no more you. Implores. I implores you to go back and tell them to send someone just a little bit more impressive next time.
Well?
Oh. Poor John.
Left for dead, John catches a break when a woman passing by scoops him up and gets him to a doctor. When he comes to sometime later, he's properly introduced to his savior, Bonnie McFarlane. Due to the loss of her 6 brothers, 5 from disease and 1 leaving to become a banker, it falls on her shoulders to take care of her father and the family ranch. This level of work and responsibility have made Bonnie a tough but still compassionate woman, as while she didn't hesitate to help a stranger like John, she does call him out for his stupid plan of walking up to the fort alone. I like Bonnie. She's one of the few people not immediately distrustful of John's work for the feds, and she sees through his attempts to use vague, flowery language to avoid opening up. She's also one of the few characters to make an appearance after their role in the story is done. Since it cost a whopping $15 to fix up John, Bonnie puts him to work helping out around her ranch. Her missions during this opening segment work as an extended tutorial to teach us about the game's various mechanics. First is your horse and horse riding in general. You can summon your equestrian pal by whistling, and soon enough he'll spawn nearby and come rushing to your side. Your horse has 3 speeds: casually galloping, moving slightly faster by holding the run button, or really taking off by mashing it instead. Your steed runs on a stamina meter, so if you work him too hard he'll eventually get tired and fed up, which will cause him to boot your ass off his back. Managing a horse's stamina is simple, as it'll refill fast if you aren't sprinting, and you have items that will instantly refill it or double it for a limited time. And spend enough time with your horse and your bond with it will grow, and permanently increase its stamina. Your horse's movement can feel awkward, as depending on its speed and the terrain it's moving over, your horse's turning can feel stiff. It also has a habit of overshooting where you're going when trying to stop, or when you're following an NPC and matching their speed. Acquiring and maintaining your horse is fairly basic at least. Wild horses roam all over the countryside, and you can start taming one by tossing a lasso around its neck to reel it in. Then just hop on its back and maintain your balance while it tries to knock you off. How long it takes to break it in varies by horse, and sometimes it just felt like I wasn't maintaining balance the right way, and it took longer than it should have. Honestly, a visual indicator like a meter in the middle of the screen probably would have helped. Or you can skip the hassle and simply buy a title for a horse from a store, though they can be pricey. Whatever you choose to do, you can save your new horse pal by attaching them to a hitch. You are limited to owning 1 horse at a time, which means your old horse gets overwritten when claiming a new one. Honestly, I didn't put too much stock on getting a particular horse, or even the best one, as the game always provides you one for missions that need one, and there's no situations where having a really good horse is necessary to complete a mission or side activity, which makes the whole thing a little underwhelming. Though in comparison, I think Red Dead 2 did way too much with taking care of your horse. After showing him around the ranch, later that night Bonnie will ask for John's help in eliminating the vermin that are eating her crops, which serves as the shooting tutorial. Shooting in Red Dead Redemption is your standard third-person shooter affair, and plays similar to its predecessor GTA 4. You can instantly snap onto your closest target before firing, you can use cover to protect yourself, and can purchase or find a variety of weapons appropriate for the time period. There aren't any weapon upgrades or customization options, and you just buy newer and stronger guns as they're unlocked throughout the story. Not much to say really. It's simple but effective. At the very least, you don't have to worry about cleaning and maintaining your gun so you can do more damage, like you do in the prequel. I do feel because most encounters take place in large open spaces with most enemies attacking from a distance, you'll end up heavily favoring rifles and pistols for most of the game. Since there's few close quarter encounters and because enemies will use cover too, I very rarely use the harder hitting weapons like shotguns. Doubly so because Deadeye heavily favors using faster firing guns that can shoot more bullets before reloading. While Red Dead Revolver is treated as non-canon to the Redemption series, the only thing still linking the games, outside of the first 2 words in their titles, is the iconic Deadeye ability. When used, the Mexico filter is activated, slowing down the action and making it easier to target and shoot enemies. There's 3 levels that are unlocked over the course of the game, with the first level just slowing things down to let you manually take shots easier. Level 2 will automatically place hit markers on specific areas of an enemy, and when pressing the fire button, John will instantly shoot those areas. And finally, level 3 lets you manually place markers instead, giving more control and making it easier to fire fatal shots on multiple enemies at once. Honestly, once you unlock that final Deadeye upgrade, the game's difficulty plummets hard. Yeah, you need to refill your Deadeye meter by killing enemies, but you can do that easily with items bought in stores, so it's easy to spam in big encounters if you prepare. Red Dead Redemption also makes use of regenerating health, but doesn't have a health meter for John. Instead, the screen gets redder and bloodier the closer he is to death. And while you can wait it out to get your health back up, there are medicines you can buy to instantly heal yourself. So yeah, the game isn't very hard. The few times I did die were usually because I failed to complete an objective, got caught in an explosion, or because John refused to take cover and I got domed trying to heal. Oh, and that one time where I accidentally stepped off a dock and instantly died when falling into the water. Yeah, I kind of forgot John Marston can't swim, and I never understood Rockstar's decision to include instant death water when San Andreas, Bully, and GTA 4 let your character swim. I guess it might have been a way to keep the player from accessing certain parts of the map too early, or to avoid going out of bounds or something. After touring the ranch, enjoying a good night's sleep, and learning the finer points of horse racing, Bonnie asks John to accompany her to Armadillo while she runs some errands. In town, we'll learn the local points of interest, mainly the doctor's office where you can buy medicine, the gunsmith where you can purchase new weapons or ammo, and the general store that sells a mix of medicines, ammo, titles for horses, and maps of the local area. Buying a map will add undiscovered points of interest from that area to your world map, and allow fast travel to those locations. In order to fast travel, you pay for a stagecoach to take you to a destination, and just like taxis in GTA, you can either watch the entire drive or skip ahead instantly. Also, some places will let you take the train instead. Luckily, you don't need to ride back to the McFarlane Ranch to save your progress, as each town has a property you can buy or rent. Like safe houses in GTA, outside of saving, resting at a property will also skip time ahead 6 hours. Each place has a hitch for your horse, a trunk to refill some of your ammo, and lets you swap out John's outfit for any others you've unlocked. But if you can't afford a room, you're also given a basic campsite kit that does the same thing, with the bonus of being able to fast travel from it too. Only drawback is that you can't use a campsite in a town, too close to a road, or on uneven ground, so it can be annoying to run around and find a good spot. A quick little tangent, but when I first played Red Dead Redemption 2, I thought you could only fast travel from the group camp to the other settlements, but not the other way around. It wasn't until like 20 hours into my playthrough that I learned you could fast travel from your makeshift campsite to the main camp, or other settlements like in this game. All you needed was the map upgrade for it. And man, did I feel like an idiot when I found out. As did a lot of other people, I take it, as I remember that being a huge complaint when the game first dropped. But back to the first game, while I've been critical of both GTA 4 and 5 for lacking the ability to buy safe houses, and do genuinely like that the option is here in Red Dead, they don't feel as necessary, mostly because the campsite comes in a pinch if you want to manually save and not waste a few minutes running to a place you own. So outside of burning money or 100% completion, you're not really incentivized to buy every property. Maybe if the safe houses would let you store extra horses, they could have been more useful. Alright then, time for a small break from the game's mechanics. After Bonnie leaves, John has the option to visit the local marshal and take missions from him too. Dropping by the jailhouse, John receives an unfriendly welcome from the deputy, and after a brief pissing match, we're properly introduced to Marshal Lee Johnson.
What's going on here?
I got me one of them Williamson boys.
I got me one of them idiots who give marshals a bad name.
Jonah, put your gun down. You must be the man from Blackwater.
Yes, sir. Listen, that dog ain't too bright, but he seems loyal.
Jonah, get out of here for a minute.
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson, sir. And you. Oh, I done seen enough of your hide around here, friend.
I think there's some school children down the way you can go and frighten.
Oh, hardy fucking har. Dickhead.
What are you doing here, Mr. Marston? apart from frightening my deputies.
The Marshal is an honorable no-nonsense lawman, but isn't particularly interested in helping John take down Bill. Partially because Bill isn't in his jurisdiction, and his gang stays away from Armadillo, but also because he's busy dealing with all the issues in his town. So John opts to help the Marshal with his workload, and hopefully get him to return the favors somewhere down the line. The first mission with them has John tag along as they both tail a known gang member back to his hideout. Once they're spotted, they'll take out his buddies, tie him up, and take him in. This is when the game introduces its honor and fame mechanics. Honor serves as your morality meter. Do good things like helping civilians or completing missions in order to increase your honor. Do bad things like committing crimes, stealing, or hurting people, and your honor decreases. How high or low your honor is will affect how NPCs interact with John, how he interacts with them, and unlock various perks as well. Behave like a good cowpoke and you'll earn more money from jobs, get discounts at stores, unlock a pretty sweet duster, and receive an item from a nun that makes it harder to get shot. Act like an unscrupulous bandito, and you can unlock a unique horse, lower the cost to bribe eyewitnesses to your crimes, and get a discount on shop prices at the local hive of scum and villainy, Thieves' Landing. Meanwhile, fame is more akin to a rating system, and reflects the public recognition John receives through all his various deeds, like completing story missions, doing side activities, finishing challenges, etc. Unlike your honor, you can't lose fame, and as you reach a new rank, you'll unlock bonuses too, like never gaining the wanted status for stealing a horse, or being able to bribe lawmen for less money. I'm kinda whatever with the honor system, and most morality systems in general in video games, mainly because it rarely benefits to play a bad or evil route, as outside of the roleplay options, the rewards never feel like they're worth it in comparison to what you earn by being a good boy. At the very least, if you do get the itch to act like an outlaw, you don't have to worry about grinding your honor back up, as if you buy and equip the bandana, your actions won't cause you to lose honor. You also won't increase your honor or fame though, so you want to make sure to keep it unequipped before the end of a mission. Returning to the McFarland Ranch, John has started to soften up to Bonnie, and he finally opens up about his past and why he's hunting Bill.
You do so love to talk in riddles, Mr. Marston. Do you do that, I wonder, as a substitute for having anything interesting to say?
Probably, Miss McFarland.
Oh, call me Bonnie, you fool. Call me Bonnie.
Miss McFarland, I'm married. I have a son. I had a daughter, but she died. Years before that, I rode in a gang. We robbed banks, trains, held people ransom. We killed people we didn't like. Bill Williamson was in that gang. Now, if I don't capture my former brother in arms, great harm will befall my family.
Huh, I always forgot John had a daughter too. Probably because she didn't appear in Red Dead 2, and this is like the only time she's ever mentioned. During this conversation, we begin to understand how John truly feels about the situation he's been forced into, and generally how he feels about himself. John, despite his efforts to be a better man and take care of his family, feels that he isn't worthy of redemption due to his criminal past. No matter how much good he does, it'll never be enough to make up for all the bad. He'll always be seen as an outlaw, and his past will always catch up to him to inevitably disrupt his life, as shown when the feds took his family and forced him to hunt his old gang, which briefly makes him give up. As he admits to Bonnie, he basically let Bill shoot him when he approached the fort. John lost his family and was given an almost impossible task to get them back, and looked for a way out, which would have worked if it wasn't for Bonnie saving him. John doesn't believe capturing or killing his old friends is even righteous in the first place. John's mother died during childbirth, and when he was 8 years old, he lost his father too, leaving the poor kid all alone to grow up in an orphanage. That was until he ran away and was taken in by Dutch Vanderlyn and his gang. Despite being criminals, and contrary to what he says, John still kinda looks at that time fondly, and he still holds some reverence for Dutch, a man he saw as a father who taught him to read, survive, and to appreciate life by seeing all the good in the world. The gang was his family, and despite how far they've fallen, it still pains him to go after them, even with his wife and son's safety on the line. John also feels it's hypocritical to judge them and condemn them for their crimes when he's just as guilty as they are. Ending the conversation when he feels he overshared too much, John will get back to helping Bonnie around the ranch. First, we gotta rustle up some cattle, and I hate it. A combo of your horse's movements and the cow's AI always makes it so I screw up rounding them up, causing a good chunk of them to go the wrong way. After that, we're introduced to Bonnie's father, Drew McFarland, and help him capture some wild horses. And finally, it's back to herding again, as Bonnie needs to rustle up her cattle before a storm scatters them away for good. It's around this time that I cross paths with Andrew McAllister, a man camping out near the McFarland Ranch. Speaking to him, Andrew says he's discovered water flowing underneath some old man's property through the use of a dowsing rod. He asks John for his help in speaking to the old coot and convincing him to sell his land in order to build a wellspring on it. Marked on your map with a question mark, this is a stranger's mission. Similar to how they function in GTA 4, when exploring the world, you'll occasionally find a person in need of assistance. These optional missions unlock as you complete the main story, and can be started and completed at any time after they're unlocked. While generally simpler than the main story missions, most Strangers missions are made up of several parts, usually requiring you to wait a few in-game days after completing one step before the next one is unlocked. While the rewards for completing them vary, they're a good source of fame and honor. That, and unlike most of the main story, you are given some leeway in how to complete them. For example, on this one, when I head over to speak to the old man, I'm given the choice of buying his land for $200, or just killing him and taking the deed. Returning to Andrew, he'll pay $15 for the deed if it was looted, or $220 if it was brought peacefully, giving you back the money spent and a bigger reward. I like the Strangers missions. They're a nice break from the story, have some more out there plots, introduce some interesting characters, and the rewards are usually worth the time investment. And they're easy enough to keep track of as their next step is shown on your map, and your journal tracks which Strangers missions are still active. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I will bring up some more interesting ones as they pop up during my playthrough. While we're on the topic of side content, what the hell is there out there to do here in the countryside? Well, City Slicker, you can entertain yourself playing horseshoes, five-finger fillet, blackjack, poker, arm wrestling, or liar's dice. Looking for something a little more relaxing? Then head to the saloon to drown your sorrows, or check out one of them newfangled motion pictures. Want to make an honest living? Why not gather herbs or hunt animals for their hide or meat and sell them in town? Or take up some work wrangling cattle, breaking in horses, or joining the local Night's Watch to protect settlements from the more unsavory types. Looking for something a little more dangerous? Then why not do some bounty hunting? Just accept a bounty, locate your target, and bring them in dead or alive for a nice payday. Though preferably alive so you can claim the entire bounty. Still not enough? Well, why not work towards completing the various hunting, sharpshooter, or survival challenges? Want more? Then get yourself a treasure map and go on an adventure looking for gold. Alright, I'm done with this bit, and apologies for whatever the hell that accent was, but you get my point. There's tons to do and several ways to make cash. And if you'd rather just play as a criminal, you can hold people up at gunpoint to rob them, rob whole trains, or crack safes. Ignoring the monetary incentives, some side activities will also give you a piece of cloth needed to unlock a particular outfit. So almost everything has some value in doing them. All this side content makes the world feel alive, and not some barren desert you're strolling through in between missions or objectives. Helped by the fact you'll see NPCs going about their business out in the wild, or just chilling at their own camp where you can join them and trade stories. And like in GTA 5, there's various random events that can occur during your journey, like saving someone from wild animals or bandits. So yeah, there's never a dull moment when playing Red Dead Redemption. Alright, let's get back on track and continue the story. Returning to Armadillo, John will help the marshal with clearing out the local gang hideout. This is yet another side activity that has you working with another person or group to take out a local gang, earning you fame, honor, money, and whatever trinkets you loot from the hideout. At the end of this particular raid, one of the deputies reports that Nigel West Dickens, the local tonics merchant, has gone missing. Despite Deputy Eli's genuine concern, and the concern of some of the townfolk, when we find the old man, we discover he's less a virtuous man delivering health tonics to the needy, and more of your run-of-the-mill snake oil salesman.
Mister, you alive?
Fuck, God damn it. Good heavens.
Excuse me?
I said, no, I'm not okay. Do I look like I'm okay?
You look pretty good for a corpse.
Praise be.
Move up, mister. Time to get you to a doctor, or an undertaker. Whichever you need once we get to town.
St. Peter, open up them pearly gates. I'm coming home.
Come on, mister. Come on.
Mr. West Dickens has run afoul of some bandits, though whether they were just robbing him or getting payback for being swindled isn't explained. Either way, we gotta get him to a doctor before he bleeds out or gets finished off by the bandits chasing after him. It'll be a couple days till Mr. West Dickens is back to his usual scamming self, so in the meantime, it's back to the Marshal. He needs all hands on deck to deal with a nasty group of bandits who brutally attacked a settlement nearby. John joins their posse as they head north, stumbling upon the bandits' handiwork along the way, until they find a survivor who says the men have taken hostages in the main house. Clearing out the criminal scum and tending to the survivors, the brutality of their actions incites Marshal Johnson, who's determined to finish off the remaining bandits who escaped. Tracking the bandits down, it turns out those men are part of Bill's group, leading to another encounter with John's old buddy. Like before, he's unwilling to give himself up, and he sicks all his men on the posse. Surviving the assault, we miss our chance to nab Bill, but the Marshal did capture his number 2, Norman Deek, who will hopefully get us to his boss after some enhanced interrogation. Returning to the McFarland ranch, we'll help Bonnie look for her dad, who was busy killing some cattle rustlers, and then return to the ranch to help deal with a fire that broke out. We'll climb our way into a burning barn, and prevent Bonnie's horses from being cooked alive. Well, just another day living out here in the countryside. Wonder what that fella's doing just hanging out at the edge of a cliff.
Hello, John. John Marston.
Do I know you?
I hope so. I seem to know you.
I'm pretty good at remembering faces.
Are you? Do you remember Hattie McCourt's face?
Who?
She was a girl Dutch Vanderlyn shot in the head on that raid on the ferry a few years back. Same one you got shot on. Pretty girl, until her eye was hanging out by a thread of tendon and her brain was plastered over a wall.
So, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure at first if I should discuss the strange man just yet, as there's a lot to unpack about who he is and what his role is in the story. But because his mission pops up so early into the game, it's very likely he would be one of, if not the first stranger most players encounter during their playthrough. Lacking a real name and just referred to as the Strange Man, he's the most enigmatic figure in the entire series. From your first conversation with him, you immediately pick up this otherworldly aura surrounding him, and that there's something not quite right about him. The story never really clarifies who or what he really is, or what his connection to John Marston is. Is he God, the devil, the evil twin of Josiah Trelawney, death itself, or just a run-of-the-mill ghost? Who knows? That's a discussion for much later in the video. It's not even clear what he wants exactly, as during this first encounter, all he does is tell John about a drunk friend of his in Thieves' Landing that's about to cheat on his wife. And if you head out there, you're given the choice to stop the man or pay him to cheat with the prostitute. What the Strange Man gets out of having John intervene is anyone's guess. But taking into account things that happen later in the story, it might be his way of testing John's morality. But let's put a pin in this little mystery for now, and we'll come back to it next time he pops up. Riding back to Armadillo and checking in with the Marshal, John finds Drew McFarland all riled up. Bonnie is missing and hasn't been seen since the barn fire. Before they can start searching, a loud bandit outside fills us in on where she is. His gang are currently holding her hostage, and they won't give her back unless the Marshal releases Norman Deek. With no choice but to comply, John, Marshal Johnson, and his deputies ride out to Tumbleweed to make the exchange. Upon arrival, the rest of the gang springs their trap, killing Norman and attempting to kill his captors. As we're fighting the bandits, one of them tries to hang Bonnie from a noose, and we'll have to rush to shoot her free before she dies of strangulation. Clearing out the remaining bandits, we'll check on Bonnie and cut her free.
Bonnie, are you okay?
I'm fine now, Mr. Marston. Thank you. Thank you. What the hell took you so long, you stupid man?
Well, you weren't exactly helping me.
If you think I'm gonna lower myself by making a joke about being all tied up, you got another thing coming. Come on.
Despite the state she's in and almost dying, Bonnie isn't all too fazed with what happened. Unfortunately, we don't follow up on how Bonnie's doing, as after this moment, she exits the plot and doesn't return until the last portion of the story. You won't even see her walking around if you go back to the ranch, and you're unable to enter her house either unless you glitch your way in. Like, Bonnie isn't the only character that vanishes from the game after they serve their purpose. But with how she saved John's life, the heavy focus on helping her during Act 1, and her very obvious feelings for him, you'd think she would still pop up here or there in other missions in a reduced role. I realized this was basically the standard for mission NPCs in Rockstar titles until GTA 5, but how some characters just vanish from the plot is part of a bigger issue I have with how the game handles its storytelling. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there much later in the video. In the meantime, let's check in on Nigel West Dickens.
And I can tell you with no uncertainty that miracle cures are no laughing matter. I bid you good day, sir. Oh, Mr. Marston, good to see you. How have you been keeping?
Looks like he's back to 100% and ready to return to conning the countryside. Despite his shady business dealings, West Dickens is a fairly likable guy. Part of it is because of how he carries himself, as he doesn't act malicious when scamming people, and kinda comes off like he believes the lies he's selling. That, and West Dickens tends to get served his just desserts in one way or another after scamming someone. We'll join him in trying to sell his latest snake oil tonic that can cure all that ails you and enhance your senses. John will be his volunteer to sell his wares, downing a bottle of whatever the hell West Dickens has brewed. Amazingly, it doesn't poison John, and instead upgrades his Deadeye to level 2. John showcasing his new sharpshooting skills by shooting some guy's hat. As thanks for helping him sell his wares to the local band of suckers, West Dickens offers to assist John in taking down Bill. He concocts a plan to get Bill and his cronies to open the gates of Fort Mercer so John can get inside and nab him. There's a few things we'll have to get done first though, and the old man tells John to pay a visit to an associate of his named Seth, who can be found at a rundown chapel.
Excuse me, are you Seth?
Who are you?
I'm a friend of Mr. West Dickens. My name's Marston. John Marston.
Goodbye, John Marston. It's been a great pleasure.
I need your help, Seth. We need your help. Me and Mr. West Dickens.
Let me be frank for 1 second, partner. I hate people. It was people who got me in this mess in the first place.
What mess?
Look at me. Look, scrambling around, looking for maps, half insane. I ain't washed in 6 months. My hair falling out, my mind's going.
Seth is easily the most unpleasant and slimiest character in the game. This squirrely little man with barely half a mind is a grave robber, which in the criminal hierarchy is as low as it gets. While what he does is extremely distasteful, Seth argues he's far better than other criminals because robbing the dead isn't as harmful as robbing the living. Which, yeah, I guess he has a point, though it's also implied he enjoys the company of corpses just a little too much. Seth has worked for Bill and his boys in the past, occasionally taking some seedier jobs they wouldn't do. Due to that, the dirty little grave robber can convince them to open up the gates when he shows up with West Dickens. Though before he's willing to play ball, we need to help him get a treasure map from his old partner. Seth's buddy Moses is currently locked up in Benedict Point, but we'll need to create a diversion to lure the lawmen guarding him away from the jailhouse. Assuming you haven't committed any crimes yet, this is when the game introduces its wanted system. Commit a crime in front of the law or an eyewitness who reports the crime, before you can bribe or stop them, and you'll gain the wanted status. Law enforcement will give chase and you'll have to escape their red search radius, and stay out of sight until your wanted level disappears. But if you weren't wearing a bandana, and they spot your face, a bounty will be placed on John, with the amount depending on the crime he committed. And any more crimes he commits while having a bounty will increase what he has to pay. Also, while said bounty is active, lawmen will attempt to capture John on sight. And if the price of your head is particularly high, bounty hunters will start ambushing and hunting you rather frequently until your bounty is gone, which you can do by letting yourself get captured, waking up in jail, and having your bounty deducted from your wallet. Though if you lack the available funds, you'll either have to do some bounty hunting missions to pay off the debt, or just grind cash with some side activities. However, you do have the option to remove your bounty without paying, if you get your hands on a pardon letter, which is conveniently given to us at the end of this mission. With the pardon letter in hand, just head over to your local telegraph office to turn it in and return to being a law-abiding citizen. Pardons are rare though and can't be bought, only obtainable by finishing certain missions, looting chests, cracking safes, or clearing out a gang hideout. Overall, I like the wanted and bounty system in Red Dead Redemption. Marshals and deputies aren't as tedious to deal with like the police in GTA. You're given several options to prevent getting a bounty in the first place after committing a crime, and the escalating threat from groups of bounty hunters are proportional to how high your bounty is. So the punishment fits the crime and you're never put in an unfair situation of dealing with an overwhelming force of lawmen just because you stole a horse or accidentally punched a store owner. Even in the early game when mission payouts are low, getting a bounty isn't too bad, assuming you're completing some side activities for extra cash, or you behave like a good cowpoke. After getting the piece of the map he needed, we'll meet up with Seth later to start looking for his treasure, and to transport some bodies he dug up. His map points to the abandoned town of Tumbleweed, and after returning to Seth sometime later, he'll need protection from other treasure hunters who have swarmed the area. Once they're all dead, he'll finally get his hands on his prize, an old glass eye. And man, Seth looks so crushed and defeated. After all that work, his treasure is just worthless junk. On the bright side, he's on board to help John get into Fort Mercer. Meeting up with Nigel West Dickens, the next step of his plan is to raise some funds to modify his cart. But business hasn't been booming as of late. So instead of selling tonics, this time we need to win him a horse race. The race isn't anything special, but surprisingly, this is the second of only 3 horse races in the entire game. I'm never a fan of racing side missions in GTA or similar games, but this seems like a wasted opportunity. The developers could have easily padded out the side content and filled out the map with optional horse races. It would have been yet another way to make money, and could have made owning a horse with better stats actually important for use in harder races. But who knows, maybe they ran out of time during development, and couldn't add more races in time. After the race, Mr. West Dickens says we'll need some serious firepower. So he sends John out to meet yet another one of his fine associates, a fellow by the name of Irish.
Yes, boyo, you messed up properly this time, didn't you? You little paddy bastard! You thieving McCunt!
You got it all wrong, Welsh. All wrong. It was French, I promise. He said he was going to rip you off. Now he's ripping me off.
Here, keep on talking there, Irish. In about 15 more seconds, your whole world's gonna turn black.
What's up, boys?
Fuck off, boyo. This don't concern you.
Saving Irish from the 2 guys attempting to kill him, he shows his gratitude by agreeing to lead John to the firepower he needs. Outside of being a thief and a drunk Irish stereotype, there really isn't much to Irish's character. A cowardly man with a penchant for over-exaggerating the truth, he immigrated to America when he was a teenager. On the boat ride is where he'd meet his 2 friends that we just killed, French and Welsh. Guess it's true what they say, there's no honor among thieves. Irish is also quite unreliable, as when he leads John to the camp that's supposedly in possession of a Gatling gun, he bails when the people there start shooting, and it turns out they didn't have jack shit either. Later on, after tracking down that drunk's whereabouts, Irish will lead us to a mining camp where the Gatling gun is actually being held. Why miners would need a Gatling gun is beyond me, but maybe they get raided a lot by bandits. Shooting through the camp and down into the mines, we'll find the Gatling gun, wheel it out on a minecart, and get out of there. After a couple more missions with Nigel West Dickens to procure the funds to modify his cart, and another job with Irish to get ammunition for the Gatling gun, we'll have all the pieces we need to move on Bill.
Okay.
Marshals of the law, when the shooting starts, take that as your cue to start awarding each other medals.
Huh?
I mean, take that as a cue to get inside and clean up the mess.
Oh. All I care about is Williamson. It is vital we stop him.
Agreed. That man is a stone-cold killer.
Williamson's a proud fool. The question is which will win out between his pride and his instinct for survival.
John hides in West Dickens' cart, and with Seth already inside the fort, he'll open the gate and let them through. And after some song and dance from the old man to distract the gang, John will pop out of the cart with a Gatling gun and start blasting. We'll get into a brief turret section gunning down Bill's gang before teaming up with the marshal and his boys to clear out the rest of the fort. There's no sign of Bill though, and before they can start searching, a huge group of reinforcements will descend on the fort, leading into another turret section. After the smoke clears and all the bandits are dealt with, there's still no sign of Bill. Looks like we just missed him, as according to one of his cronies, Bill has gone south of the border to Nuevo Paraiso, Mexico. John figures Bill has gone seeking the help of another ex-member of the Vanderlyn gang, Javier Escuela. Saying goodbye to New Austin, Act 1 of the game comes to a close as we meet up with Irish and get buried into Mexico. Man, it's a damn shame I can't use the actual song that plays when you first enter Mexico, Far Away from Jose Hernandez, since it's copyrighted, as it perfectly sets the stage for our journey into this new unknown land. Mexico, el ombligo de la luna, a land of high mountains, deep canyons, and sweeping deserts. A country with a rich culture and history. Who knows what kind of adventures we'll get up to in this new place? What's that, señorita? You're in trouble? How can I help? Hijo de puta. Alright, I know those guys put you up to this, so I'll let you off with a warning. A warning to others not to fuck with me. Alrighty, let's get down to business and start looking for Bill and Javier. First stop is Chuparosa. Riding into town, John isn't given the warmest of welcomes by the locals, who attempt to rob him. He very promptly teaches them he's not a man to be fucked with, which gets the attention of his fellow American, Landon Ricketts.
Oh, very good. Very good indeed, sir. What a great way to improve border relations. An illiterate farmer crossing the river, coming into their civilization and butchering the local peasants? Thank you very much, sir.
Don't mention it, old man.
You kill peasants, you become a peasant.
Landon Ricketts is a former star gunslinger whose escapades were legendary. Tales of his adventures spreading far and wide, even reaching John's ears when he was a boy. Though his star would eventually fizzle out, and he'd leave America for a quieter life in Mexico. Despite the old man being past his prime, he can't help but shit-talk John's shooting skills, and gives him some impromptu training, shooting bottles, and some birds, which unlocks level 3 of the Deadeye meter. While practicing, John fills Ricketts in on how he's come to Mexico in search of Bill and Javier. The old man doesn't have a beat on where to find them, as the country is once again in the midst of a revolution, with several Americans crossing the border to offer their services as mercenaries to both the rebels and the local government run by Colonel Allende. After John is done improving his shooting, the local bank manager asks for their help in finding a wagon attacked by banditos. Our first night in Mexico coming to a close when they find the wagon driver and guide him back to town. The following day, John finds Ricketts talking to a guy called Emilio and his friend. They have some info on Javier and believe he's working with the Mexican army. While they can't confirm it's the same guy John's looking for, and don't know if Bill is with them, Ricketts is spurred to help because the army kidnapped Emilio's sister, a young woman and school teacher named Louisa, who is apparently close to the rebel leader Reyes. The two Americans head for the small town of Casa Madrugada, and after speaking to the local butcher, he tells them the army took Louisa to their camp in a valley up north. Once they arrive, the pair go guns blazing, carving a path through the small regiment of soldiers, finding Louisa and then escaping with her to safety. Unfortunately, Javier wasn't here, but Louisa recalls hearing his name while in prison, so chances are he's still in Mexico somewhere. While John is no closer to finding him or Bill, he is reunited with a certain someone.
Welcome to Nuevo Paraiso, John.
Where do I know you from?
You're famous, John. You're the man who shot a bunch of banditos as soon as he turned up in this country. You're a man who decided right and wrong, between a man and death, between a man and his wife.
And who are you?
You know, I admire you, John. I hope my boy turns out just like you.
Like before, the strange man is as cryptic as ever, and we're no closer to understanding what he wants, which agitates John as he's starting to feel like he's being strung along, especially since the top hat wearing weirdo sends him off to go help another random person, this time a nun collecting money for charity in the town of Las Hermanas. I kinda thought you were going to have to stop thieves from robbing her, or choose to join in, but it's a lot simpler. Either help Mother Superior by donating $10, or decline and lose some honor and feel bad about yourself. Feels like the equivalent of choosing whether or not to round up your food order to donate to charity at McDonald's. You can mug her for the money she has, but you can do that with anyone, so it doesn't feel any eviler just because she's a nun. We'll come back to the strange man the next time he shows up. In the meantime, it's time to play some cards. Sitting down with Landon Ricketts, we'll join him for a game of poker with some German guy called Mueller and his buddies. Random fun fact, I never actually understood how to play poker properly when I was younger, until I played Dead Rising 2. In that game, there's a group of survivors who won't join you unless you beat them at cards. It's not that I found the rules or what poker hands were best confusing, I just never found poker fun at all. Which is why I love Balatro so much. It spiced up the game with multipliers and effects you can buy with your money and other things to reinvent it into something more tactical and really addictive. Go check out Balatro if you've never played it. It's insanely good. Thanks to my poker skills and the heart of the cards, I clean house. But Mueller is a sore loser and claims John was cheating. While things briefly get tense with everyone pointing guns at each other, things de-escalate and Mueller opts to challenge John to a duel instead. Assuming you haven't accepted a challenge from a random person before this point, this mission serves as our tutorial for dueling. At the beginning of the duel, things will slow down and you need to pull out your piece once you see the prompt to draw. Take out your gun at the right time and the camera will zoom in close to your target. But if you draw too fast before the prompt, the camera will zoom out, making your enemy harder to hit. Deadeye will then activate and you'll need to move the crosshair and tag different spots of your opponent. The accuracy of your shots determined by how small and white the crosshair was before you tagged it. As you tag them, your dueling meter starts to fill, with shots aimed at vital body parts like the chest or head filling the meter higher. You don't have to completely fill the meter, and it just has to exceed the amount your opponent fills their meter. Then just open fire and light them up to win. Though if you're skilled enough, you can opt to win by just shooting the gun out of their hand. It's almost exactly like how duels worked in Red Dead Revolver, except nowhere near as punishing or finicky in its mechanics. It helps that you have more control over the cursor as you move it around the screen. After killing Mueller, his buddy gets angry and challenges us to a duel too, but takes a girl hostage to use as a shield. And because I'm such a gamer god, I totally dropped him like nothing and definitely did not have to retry this part multiple times. After that little snafu, John will come back to have a drink with Ricketts. As they're drinking, John will open up about his past to the old man, his relationship with Javier Escuela, and his mission to hunt the remaining members of the gang he used to be a part of. Unfortunately, this conversation doesn't do anything to flesh out the kind of person Javier is, which I'll come back to when he pops up later. Luisa will soon arrive in a panic. Colonel Allende has been rounding up rebels and suspected rebels and others critical of his regime, unfairly executing them without trial. Another wagon full of prisoners is passing through and she needs us to find them, kill the guards, hijack the wagon, and get those people to freedom. Afterwards, we can speak to Luisa to start doing missions for her. But first, let's see what the other side of this conflict is like.
What do you want, gringo? What are you doing here? Have you heard? There's a war going on.
My name's John Marston. Been sent here to retrieve a couple of men. Can I speak to your commander?
You want to talk to my boss, gringo?
I guess.
Because I'm not good enough for you?
No, sir.
You think you're better than me? You come to my country, my poor little country, and you think you can be friends with the president?
No, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Things must have come out wrong. Maybe you can help me.
You'll be sorry, friend. Relax! Relax! How you?
Sure. Somewhere between a threatening stare and the soldier's arm to the teeth? Yeah, you had me.
Welcome to Mexico, amigo!
After he's done messing with John, our new buddy introduces himself as Captain Vicente de Santa, staunchly loyal to the current Mexican administration and their Colonel Allende. De Santa initially portrays himself as an honorable man just trying to stop a bloodthirsty uprising. But the longer we work with him, the more he shows his true colors, as he's needlessly cruel when killing rebels, and any civilians supposedly aiding them. De Santa also turns a blind eye to the Colonel's heinous crimes, and sees no issues in kidnapping women for his glorious leader to force himself onto. Asking him about Javier and Bill, he isn't familiar with them, but claims most outlaws around these parts have allied themselves with the rebels, and their leader Abraham Reyes. Since John doesn't have any real leads on his former buddies, he decides to offer his support to De Santa for now. Our first job for him is rather lengthy. John must assist in protecting a train carrying supplies for the Mexican army. First, he'll run alongside the train while fighting off waves of rebel soldiers. Once it reaches its destination and everyone takes a quick break, the rebels will hijack the train and John will have to pick them all off before hopping onto the train and slamming the brakes before it careens off a cliff. Returning to the town of Escalera, we'll meet the illustrious Colonel Allende, who's in the middle of berating De Santa.
¿Qué diablo es este cabrón? That's the man who helped us defeat Reyes. The man I spoke to you of. Friend of Mexico.
Hello, sir.
Hola, gringo. So you are the bounty hunter, huh? Have you found your prey yet?
No, sir.
Governor of Nuevo Paraiso, Allende is as unpleasant as you'd expect from a corrupt official abusing his power to subjugate the masses. Despite those faults, John is willing to continue assisting him when the colonel reveals he knows Javier Escuela, and that he'll help track him down for John. So off we go to our next job, helping the Mexican army clear out a small town of rebels before burning the place down with fire bottles. Next, we'll assist DeSanta in protecting a wagon convoy heading to an army camp, before getting into a firefight when rebels ambush him. Around this time, John is starting to get fed up with the lack of progress in finding Javier or Bill, but Colonel Allende claims those two are totally working for Abraham Reyes, and he'll gladly tell John how to get to them, and pay him a whopping 20,000 pesos if he does another job. John takes the bait, and he's sent to protect another train. But this time it's a turret section that has you gunning down rebels with a Gatling gun. However, John may not have been meant to survive this mission, as the Mexican captain assisting him notes that the train is seriously underdefended, filled mostly with new recruits, and people the colonel doesn't like. Also, that bastard never pays out those 20,000 pesos either. I'm starting to think the corrupt Mexican government we're assisting aren't very good people. Let's swap sides again and check in on Luisa to see how things are going with the rebels.
Señor Marston, mamá, papá, este es el gringo que me salvó.
Muchas gracias. My family's indebted to you. Forgive my English.
What's happening?
Great and terrible things. The revolution is coming. The country will be in turmoil once more. This time, we hope it's the last time.
Does that seem likely?
With Abraham Reyes, anything is possible.
Luisa and her family are preparing for the upcoming revolution, hopeful that this time it'll all work out. While she's ready to fight and die for the cause, her parents and brother are fleeing their home to go into hiding to wait and see how things turn out. Meanwhile, her little sister will be working for a man in the Yucatan, and so Luisa asks John to get her to the docks to catch her boat in time. Cue a timed mission where John has to escort her on a horse wagon while outrunning the Mexican army. After getting her sister to the boat, John will return to the distraught Luisa sitting outside her burnt-out home. Good thing her family got out when they did. Luisa isn't upset about her home, or even addresses it was destroyed. No, her heart weeps because her true love, future husband, and the leader of the rebellion, Abraham Reyes, has been captured. So it's up to John to reunite these two lovebirds by sneaking into where Reyes is being held, taking out his captors, and escaping to freedom. Unfortunately, the glorious leader of the revolution isn't as amazing as we've been led to believe. For one, despite Luisa claiming he wants to tear down class divides, and doesn't share the elitist views of the noble class, Reyes does see himself above the peasants he's fighting for. He's also racist against the Chinese immigrants who are exploited for labor, and arguably have it worse than the Mexican peasants. And even though Luisa is quite infatuated with him, he doesn't actually return her feelings. Reyes can't even remember her name most of the time, and is happy to offer Luisa up to John if he wants, in exchange for helping the rebels. It's outright stated he's suckered several girls with that same song and dance too. For all his faults though, he's still not as bad as Allende. And to his credit, he does actually go into the field and fight with his men, as opposed to letting them do all the dirty work. Still, it's astonishing that someone as intelligent as Luisa can't see through this obvious bullshit. That never happened to me. No siree Bob. Heading back to DeSanta and Allende, they've got some great news. Javier and Bill have been found. The two of them were cornered in Chuparosa by the Mexican army. Well, alright. Playing both sides does have its perks after all. Finally, we can return to our original goal and get the plot moving again.
Mr. Marston, gracias for your service to this land.
Son of a bitch. Looks like John has outlived his usefulness and is done for. That is, until Reyes comes to the rescue. Well, alright. Reyes, you may be a pompous, womanizing douchebag, undeserving of Luisa's love, but you're an alright hombre in my book. Once John is free, he joins the other rebels in taking out the soldiers in town, and one of their high-ranking officials, Captain Espinosa. DeSanta escaped to live another day, but taking control of Chuparosa and winning this battle has started to shift the fight in favor of the revolution. Though this does have the unfortunate side effect of Allende's side escalating the violence, as next time we bump into Luisa, she informs John that her father was caught and killed under suspicion of being a traitor. She's not upset or even feels guilty that her association with the revolution led to his death. Instead, Luisa is spurred on that his death shouldn't be in vain, and that he died for something, prompting this great line from John.
It'll mean that war is brutal and unnecessary and good people die. And that's all it will mean.
I get where Luisa's coming from. Things suck in Nuevo Paraiso under Allende, and nothing will change unless people rise up against him. But the revolution has blinded her to the fact that hundreds of innocent people not part of the cause have been caught in the crossfire because of Reyes' rebellion. I'm pretty sure John killed quite a few of them while working for DeSanta. Like, maybe she's in denial, or this is her way of trying to cope with his death, but Luisa wants to martyr her dad for a cause he wanted no part of. Now, I'm not saying her revolution is bad. I'm a red-blooded American. That's how this country was formed. But if you're willing to sacrifice everything and everyone for your righteous cause, including the people you're trying to liberate, you run the risk of becoming what you sought to overthrow. Despite his stance that war is war, John does relent and helps Luisa by blowing up a convoy of the Colonel's reinforcements with dynamite. And then our final mission with her has us going after DeSanta, killing his men and giving him a good thrashing before deciding his fate, either personally killing him or letting the rebels do it. This isn't my fight. Light him up, amigos.
Check out what I did.
Esto es para Mexico!
Working directly with Abraham Reyes now, John will first assist him in hijacking an army train. Next, after walking in on Reyes having sex with some random woman who definitely isn't Luisa, seriously girl, open your eyes, he has some good news for us. They found Javier Escuela. He's been working for the Mexican army this entire time, and is at their military stronghold, El Presidio. Driving a wagon full of TNT, John crashes it into the fort to blow open the gates. Oops, let's try that again. There we go. Once inside the fort, we'll work with the rebels to overtake the place until we come face to face with Javier Escuela.
Hello, old friend. It's been a long time.
Hello, brother. It's good to see you. I heard you was coming. You took your time, no? Come on, you're not gonna shoot your own brother, are you? We was family.
Yeah, we were. Then you and Dutch went crazy and family didn't mean so much.
So now you do the government's work.
And what do? You just work for a different government.
Man, Javier, he feels so underwhelming in this game, and like an afterthought that was thrown into the game late during development. I say that because while our objective this whole chapter was searching for him and Bill, like 98% of our time in Mexico didn't actually contribute to that in any way. We've spent this entire time wrapped up in the revolution, helping both sides because maybe someone knows something. There was no tangible progress in our search until right now at the end. With Bill, we're introduced to him right at the beginning. The game establishes he's a serious threat right away due to the size of his gang, and because he took over an almost impenetrable fort. Because of that, it's justified that John has to help out different characters in order to form a plan, and have some help going after Bill. That and Bill is still a presence that's felt throughout this portion too, even indirectly when we're mostly fighting as men. Javier, on the other hand, we know close to nothing about, other than just being another guy who used to be in Dutch's gang. John doesn't say much about him. Most people we speak to haven't even heard of him. So we got zero clue what his reputation or his personality's like. All we get is this one mission to flesh him out, and honestly, he's no different than your run-of-the-mill criminal you can catch for a bounty. Which makes me wonder if that was the original idea for him, as unlike Bill and Dutch, Javier is the only one you're given the choice to capture alive or dead. Honestly, Bill suffers the same problem during this section, and it feels like it would have made more sense to kill him back at Fort Mercer. Job well done, the feds then send John to Mexico after hearing about Javier popping up. Granted, since he's out of the country, there really wouldn't be a need to go after him, but maybe they can justify it by stating Javier could lead them to Dutch. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually enjoyed this section in Mexico, but the story structure is messy. Like, if John had to work with DeSanta and Allende first, Then when he's betrayed, Javier can show up and reveal he's been working for them this entire time. John then can help the rebels fight the army, often butting heads with forces led by Javier, failing to catch him until the very end. It makes him an active participant in the story, differentiates him from Bill by having him go out and fight instead of hiding in his fort, and ties the rebel plot to the main story. It would improve our time in Mexico and make it feel less like a filler episode in between the Bill and Dutch arcs of the story. Alright, let's wrap things up. I've got more to say on how Red Dead 2 does a lot to fix the holes in this game, but I'll save it for later. After taking control of the stronghold and capturing Javier, we'll meet up with John's federal contacts, Edgar Ross and Archer Fordham, to hand him over. Before leaving, they tell John to hurry up and get Bill pronto, as they'll need him in Blackwater for his final target. Dutch van der Linde has resurfaced in West Elizabeth. Luckily, it doesn't take us long to find Bill, as he's hiding at Colonel Allende's villa. And the rebels are already there in Escaleta to overthrow the guy. Well, actually, they got their asses kicked, so it's up to John to once again turn the tides. Arriving in town, John interrupts some soldiers about to kill Reyes, and during their standoff, Luisa recklessly charges in and gets herself killed. After avenging her and freeing Reyes, we'll free the rest of the prisoners, and working together, we get into one final battle with Colonel Allende's forces, advancing up the hill to his villa, breaking in and giving chase when he tries to escape with Bill by wagon. Both men cornered, Allende tries to bargain for his life by offering up Bill, which only buys him another 30 seconds before Reyes takes him out.
Dutch wanted you dead! We all did!
Well, I'm going after him next! I'll outlive all of you!
You always was a traitor! You bastard orphan!
And you always was a dumb inbred hick!
Esta noche duermo en tu cama, cabrón.
All right, John. I'll come quietly.
And so ends the hunt for Bill Williamson. Honestly, I wish we'd gotten a final cutscene confrontation between these two, as I felt a little empty at the end of this chapter. I already said how I feel about Javier, and again, I think Bill's story should have ended in New Austin. At the end, all I could think about was, where the hell did Landon Ricketts go? And also how pitiful Louisa's death was. Not only did she throw her life away for a man who didn't love her, and promptly forgets her, the revolution she believed so much in only ends up replacing one tyrant with another. As revealed in newspapers towards the end of the game, Reyes ends up just as bad as Colonel Allende. Man, if it wasn't for catching Javier and killing Bill, everything we did here would have been all for nothing. Then again, maybe that was the point. As after all, war never changes.
Since the dawn of humankind, when our ancestors first discovered the killing power of rock and bone.
Okay, no, despite what I said about this chapter, it did have some great characters like Landon Ricketts, and I still like Louisa despite her blind devotion to Reyes. I just wish the whole experience was a little more cohesive. Alright, let's head back to the land of the free and the home of the brave, and track down Dutch van der Linde. On our way to Blackwater, we'll have one last encounter with a strange man. Unlike before though, he's not sending us off to help a random person in need. No, this time he just wants to enjoy the scenery.
Hey, this a beautiful spot.
Sure. What are you doing here?
My accounts. I'm an accountant.
Is that so?
In a way.
What's your name?
You know, it's the darndest thing. I can't remember.
Tell me your damn name and where you know me from.
Well, I know you from Mexico. I know you from back out west. Hell, I know you from all over.
Tell me your name or I won't be responsible for my actions.
Oh, but you will. You will be responsible. This is a fine spot. See you around, cowboy.
Damn you!
Yes, many have.
We never receive an answer for what the strange man was all about. I said before that it's clear he's supernatural in nature, and personally, I think he's Death, the Grim Reaper himself. I base that off how he's dressed in all black, how he recounts the events of the Blackwater massacre John was involved in, how John should know him from all the things he did out west and in Mexico, and how the strange man calls himself an accountant, and how he's here to do his job. Death is a specter that's been hanging around John quite literally from the day he was born when his mother died in childbirth. Popped up again with the death of his father, the innocents he killed during his time with Dutch's gang, and of course, those he killed throughout the game. As for why he had John help those random people, well, maybe it was the strange man's way of testing his morality. Though what you choose to do doesn't actually change anything, so it could just be him fucking with John. We'll never know, but this scene does subtly foreshadow the ending of the game. And before anyone says it, yeah, I know the whole thing with him and Herbert Moon in the prequel, but I'll talk about that whenever I get to covering Red Dead Redemption 2. For now, let's get ourselves to Blackwater and start making moves on Dutch.
I got you Williamson and Escuela. It's over. Stop playing games with me.
No one's playing games with you, Mr. Marston. But if we were to play some games, there'd be some interesting ones we could play.
Thanks, sir.
Like hanging you for murder, or confiscating all your property, like that little farm of yours, or having you put in an electric chair. Those are the sort of games we could play. But we choose to play a different game. So calm down and play along with us.
Now, I haven't addressed this at all, but there's probably a few of you wondering why the government wanted or even needed John Marston to hunt down his old gangmates. Well, it's alluded to earlier in the game by John, and later explained by Edgar Ross, but it's part of a larger plan to tame the Wild West. The Bureau of Investigation was brought in by local politician and candidate for governor, Nate Johns. He's never shown in-game. All you get is mentions of him in the newspaper, in a stranger's mission, and by the elderly women sitting behind John on the train at the start of the game. Nate plans to win the election for governor by stamping out crime around West Elizabeth and New Austin, which involves taking out the two worst criminals around, Bill Williamson and Dutch Vanderlinde. And Javier Escuela too, I guess. Again, the bigger focus is on the first two. One of the game's bigger themes is how the old world and way of living is disappearing. Modernization and the advancement of technology is slowly eroding the way of life out here. It has its positives, like bringing stability and safety, but also removes the autonomy and freedom of the people out here in the countryside. As brought up by Marshall Johnson and several other characters, the increased presence of the government hasn't gone unnoticed, and the locals are resentful of losing the right to govern themselves, not to mention the whole heap of taxes that comes with the government moving in. So by having the feds take out the worst criminals around, they can get the locals to soften up and agree that the government having a stronger foothold here is actually a good thing, effectively taming the Wild West and uniting the country. Okay, so how does John factor into all this? Well, for one, he's resourceful. John basically won the Mexican Revolution for Reyes on his own. The other is that Ross doesn't want Dutch to be martyred and claims that the government killing someone like him, who strongly opposes the New Order, would just inspire others to follow his lead as opposed to being killed by another criminal like John. This is ignoring the fact that the locals, Bill, Dutch, and their gangs know he's a government lackey even if he isn't part of the Bureau of Investigation. Ross is just talking out of his ass, and in reality didn't want to get his hands dirty, and wanted a disposable pawn. For him, it's all about creating the illusion of an effective government response. Getting the locals to agree to the federal government expanding its reach hinges on producing results. And while Ross no doubt has the manpower and the resources to get the job done, he doesn't want to risk it, and so he enlists John. Outside of his relationship to his former gang, the locals are more inclined to trust John, as opposed to a run-of-the-mill bureau agent, and again, he's expendable. If he blows it, the feds can deny any accountability, and they lose nothing. But if John gets the job done, they can swoop in and take all the credit. This isn't really some grand conspiracy or anything either. John knows full well that's why he's been recruited. He just isn't in a position to do anything about it because they have his family. So to sum it all up, big government bad, and Edgar Ross is a slimy asshole, looking to get ahead without doing the work himself. Ross also embodies this new modern way of life, favoring newer firearms and using an automobile instead of a horse. Leaving the office with the two bureau agents, we'll bump into Nigel West Dickens, who has gotten himself arrested for his scamming. Though John does do him a solid, and asks he be released since the old man assisted with taking down Bill. And surprisingly, Ross agrees to let him go. Adios, Nigel West Dickens. May our paths never cross again. Following up on the lead about Dutch's last location, it turns out it was a trap, as Dutch is nowhere to be seen, and all we find is the Bureau's informant Nastas, tied up and a group of Dutch's men lying in wait to kill us. Escaping the ambush and returning to Blackwater, we drop off Nastas at the office of Harold McDougal, a researcher, anthropologist, and our next mission giver. I'm not going to discuss McDougal much, mostly because his missions aren't too unique, and tie into the main goal of catching Dutch. That, and he's kind of a bland character. Just a cartoonishly racist guy who treats the native population as savages and subhuman. Yeah, I know he's meant to reflect the sentiment of the time, but Edgar Ross and other NPCs' attitudes towards Native Americans does a better job reflecting that racism without getting goofy. Our next tip about Dutch bears some fruit, as there's word he's preparing to ride into town to rob the bank. Right on cue, he shows up with his gang, and after a struggle, John will storm the bank with the army, and come face to face with his old mentor for the first time since the end of Red Dead 2.
Oh, it's nice to see you, John.
Hello, Dutch.
How's Abigail?
Well, I hope. Ain't seen her for a while.
'Cause you've been chasing me?
Let the woman go, Dutch.
Of course. Of course. How's your little boy?
He ain't so little now.
No, he must be what? 15? 16? Doesn't time fly?
Don't adjust. It's over, man.
Of course. Of course. I surrendered, John. You're the master now.
I've been my master since you left me to die.
We all make mistakes, John. I never claimed to be a saint, but equally, I never took you for an errand boy.
If Edgar Ross is the embodiment of the New Order and the spread of modernization, then Dutch is the old way desperately pushing back against it. Far more intelligent than the average bandit, staunchly anti-government, valuing freedom and civil liberties above all else, and with a strong charisma that easily charms and unites people of different backgrounds to his cause, it's no wonder the Bureau of Investigation considers Dutch such a big threat. And while I still doubt Ross's reasoning, those qualities do add some truth to the idea others would take up Dutch's cause if he was killed by the feds. Although, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but this isn't the same man the feds or John knew. It's not obvious at first. Sure, he's looking older, but he still speaks in a sophisticated manner, which I forgot to mention is something John learned and emulated from Dutch. And it's more obvious if you already played Red Dead Redemption 2, but it's the way Dutch is dressed. Gone are the elegant suits and fancy clothing that went hand in hand with how he spoke, allowing Dutch to portray himself as distinguished and not another run-of-the-mill bandit. Now he's disheveled, out of shape, and his clothing looks worn out and tattered, looking like any other down-on-his-luck bandit. Sure, how he dressed in the prequel served a purpose in hiding his true nature, and allowing him to rub elbows with potential marks, but it also showed that Dutch cared how he was perceived by others, which he's completely abandoned here. Unlike Bill or Javier, Dutch isn't overtly hostile when John confronts him. He even apologizes for leaving him for dead, though Dutch can't resist trying to hurt him, by bringing up Abigail's past as a prostitute and how she slept with most of the gang, before conceiving Jack and settling down with John. You see it more later, but there's a lot of contradictions with Dutch and how he treats John during this chapter. After killing his hostage and escaping, next time we see Dutch is at the large camp he's set up with his gang. While John is scouting the area with binoculars, Dutch spots him and shoots him, though he doesn't aim to kill John and aims for his binoculars instead, knocking him out. You could argue it was dumb luck, but Dutch's silence and lack of expression makes it seem like it was deliberate and he wasn't really trying to kill John. Next time we encounter Dutch is after McDougal pushes his luck visiting the lumber camp where Dutch recruited most of his men. According to Nastas, he's been taking advantage of the younger, disenfranchised Native American men, and stirring them on into joining his cause and fighting the government. This little escapade results in Nastas getting killed, and due to how the professor treated them like animals, they want him dead.
Oh, great heavens above!
Is that you, John?
Hello, Dutch.
I think that's what they call two for the price of one out here in this wonderful place.
Maybe so, Dutch.
You and your friend there, the professor, we're gonna kill the both of you.
Why you want to do a thing like that?
I don't know. Sport, I guess.
While McDougal probably does deserve to die, Dutch doesn't really give a reason for wanting to kill him. Sure, it might be to placate his men by killing a man who spreads the idea of Native Americans being savages, and lesser than the white man as scientific fact. But going after him at his office, in the middle of town, with law enforcement and the Bureau just down the street, I don't know, it feels too impulsive, even for Dutch. After getting McDougal on a train out of town, it's time for a huge final confrontation with Dutch. Working with the Bureau and the Army, John will cut a path through Dutch's men and storm his stronghold. Once inside, he'll briefly have to disable a Gatling gun his mentor is using, before giving chase and eventually cornering Dutch with nowhere to go.
Hello again, John.
Hello, Dutch.
We gotta stop meeting like this.
Sure.
I got a plan, John.
You always got a plan, Dutch.
This is a good one.
I don't doubt it.
We can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change. Can't fight gravity. We can't fight nothing. My whole life, all I ever did was fight.
Then give up, Dutch.
But I can't give up, neither. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John. You see?
Then I have to shoot you.
When I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to. Because they have to justify their wages.
That's their business.
Our time has passed, John.
The final scene really captures the tragedy of Dutch's character, and how he's a shell of his former self. He knows what he was doing was futile, that he couldn't fight change, but still felt the need to anyways. Like he said, he's a paradox, a man of contradictions. Dutch had no goal, he had no real plan, which might sound in character considering how often he spews he has a plan without elaborating in Red Dead Redemption 2, but it's not the same. In the prequel, his plans amount to needing money and going to Tahiti, and that's it. It's not a plan, but there's some logic there. In his mind, if he has enough money, then an opportunity and a plan will hopefully present itself. I think everyone can relate to that mindset in a way. Dutch was delusional, desperate even, but there's a hope things can work out. But not here. Here, he never explains why he's doing what he's doing. Dutch is going through the motions because he feels this is just what he does. Honestly, I feel all of his actions here is just one long suicide note, and so he can see John one last time. Remember, no one has seen or heard anything about Dutch since the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, which means he hasn't been robbing, fighting the government, or doing anything until recently. Why expose yourself now? Why not live out the rest of your days in solitude? Why make a move if you know it's futile? Well, maybe he knew John had gone after Bill and Javier, and pieced together that he'd be coming for him too. Having lost everyone else, John Marston, the man he raised like his own son, is all he has left. So why not make it easier for John to find him by exposing himself? At first I wondered if maybe he wanted John to be the one to kill him, which is why he tried to aggravate him earlier by calling Abigail a whore, and then killed the innocent woman he had hostage. Hell, Dutch may have gone after McDougal because he knew John would be with them, and that they'd come to blows. And outside of the part when he's using the Gatling gun, I never got the impression Dutch was trying to kill John either. Like I said before, he aimed for his binoculars instead of just shooting him when John was scouting. And during his final chase, he doesn't even fight back, and just drops his gun at the end. It really seemed like he wanted John to put him out of his misery. But, befitting his paradoxical nature, Dutch decides to go out on his own terms, and jumps instead. Yeah, maybe it was just to deny the government the satisfaction of killing him. Not like it matters since they take credit for it anyways. But maybe in that final moment, he realized he couldn't bring himself to put that burden on John. He knew John was being forced to hunt him, and didn't want to kill him. So Dutch took the choice out of his hands. Who knows? I'll be honest, I can only really see and understand the tragedy of Dutch and his relationship with John, because I'm replaying Red Dead Redemption after the prequel. In a vacuum, there isn't enough here in the first game to understand just how bad Dutch's downfall was. You don't even really get what John meant by Dutch going crazy, as his actions arguably aren't as bad as what Bill or Javier were doing. But because I played Red Dead 2 and how great its writing was, it's just impossible for me to judge Dutch solely on his appearance here, and separate him from who he once was. Well, at the very least, our mission is finally complete, and John can return to his family and his peaceful life of being a rancher, and finally bring an end to the game. So I was debating putting up a spoiler warning, mainly since this game is almost 15 years old now, and its ending is so well known even by those who haven't played it. But I realized quite a few people got into the series with Red Dead Redemption 2, so out of respect to them or anyone else interested in trying it out, skip to this time code here to avoid spoilers for the ending.
Abigail! Jack! Anyone here? Anyone home? Oh, darling. I never thought I'd see this day again.
You no-good hillbilly piece of shit! I thought you was dead! I thought you was dead, John, huh? Where you been? Where you been?
You know where I've been, darling. You know.
You saw Dutch, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw him.
And Bill?
Yeah, I saw him too.
And you didn't go back to him?
I left that life. Just as you left yours.
So despite the buildup of taking out Dutch, then his death, and what felt like a lead-up to a tearful reunion between John and his family, the game doesn't actually end and keeps going for a few more missions. Which wouldn't be so bad if these missions weren't boring ranch work. Like, I understand the logic. The game wants to flesh out Abigail, Jack, and Uncle, and their relationship with John. But something like this feels like it would have made more sense as the prologue to the game before Edgar Ross takes his family, and not its epilogue. Then you could understand what John lost and what he's fighting for, before he goes after Dutch and the others. And the game already starts with you doing some mundane ranch work with Bonnie McFarland, so it's not like the developers were worried the players would be bored at the beginning. I guess it's meant to have the story come full circle, have it begin and end with John doing ranch work, or create a false sense of security, make you think everything's okay. I don't know, it doesn't really work for me. It just kinda leaves me deflated and wanting the game to end already. So I'm gonna speedrun through this part and discuss Abigail, Jack, and Uncle for a bit before getting to the ending. First we got John's lovely wife, Abigail. As we see when reuniting with her, she's quite the firecracker. Her time in the Vanderlyn gang has made her tough, and she can take care of herself when John isn't around. Like John, Abigail hopes Jack can live a brighter life than they did, and that the boy uses his smarts and book learning to be more than a rancher or a frontiersman. Maybe write books of his own. Despite how much she clearly loves her husband, she can't help but be a little suspicious when John receives a telegram from Bonnie McFarland. While she grills John about who she is, she does mellow out when finding out Bonnie saved John's life, and when meeting her in person when the pair give her family some of their spare corn. See? Told you Bonnie would come back. Next is Uncle, who isn't actually John's uncle, and is a family friend he left in charge of watching the farm while he was out hunting Dutch and the others. Which Uncle did a piss-poor job of, as several things were stolen, things started to fall apart, cattle disappeared, and crops were eaten. Like John and Abigail, he was also part of Dutch's group, but he didn't really do much, and just kinda hung around the camp while the others were earning money, hunting, cooking, cleaning, or doing anything of use. While extremely lazy, and not useful at doing much, Uncle does care about the Marston family, and is loyal to them, as we'll soon see. And finally, that brings us to John's son, Jack. While the boy looks up to his father, he does hold quite a bit of resentment for him too. Conceived and born while his parents were still running with Dutch, John initially refused to accept he was Jack's father, abandoning him and Abigail for a year, which led to the rest of the gang to pitch in and help raise him. While John would eventually clean up his act, this whole mess with the feds and Dutch would reopen Jack's issues with his dad, especially since John's protectiveness makes Jack feel like he's being babied, and spurs the kid to prove he's a real man, to some near disastrous results when he needs rescuing after trying to hunt a grizzly on his own. I remember Jack Marston getting a bad rap back in the day, both because of his demeanor and how things turned out with him in the end. But like Dutch, Red Dead Redemption 2 did a lot to show all the crap he went through, and made his resentment more understandable since John wasn't exactly Father of the Year for most of the game. Also, despite what his parents wanted for him, can you really blame Jack for the choices he makes after what happens next?
Take a look at that.
Jack, go into the house, lock all the doors. Whatever happens, don't come outside. You hear me? Whatever happens.
Okay.
Come here, son. Whatever happens, keep the doors locked and your mother inside. Promise me, son. Promise me.
Who is it, Pa?
It's just some old friends. Me and Uncle take care of it. Now you go inside and you keep the doors and the windows locked.
I hear you.
Then run!
Yeah, run, boy.
Well, old man, looks like things is about to get settled once and for all.
So it seems.
Despite all John has done, enjoying a peaceful life with his family on the farm was not in the cards. Like Dutch warned, the feds would move on to another monster after he was gone. Whether Ross always intended to kill John, considers him a loose end, or he just wanted one more commendation by taking out the last member of the Vanderlyn gang, isn't explained, and honestly, it's probably a combination of all three. Either way, all John can do is take one last stand along with Uncle to protect his wife and son. It's a long battle against a seemingly endless swarm of army soldiers. The battle pushing John back towards his home, with Jack joining in to help as best as he can. The guys manage to buy themselves a brief moment to regroup, but unfortunately, Uncle doesn't make it.
You take Jack and Abbott. Take them and... Don't worry about me. Just get him out of here.
No! Uncle, please! Oh my God! They killed him!
Come on, son! Ain't nothing we can do for him now!
Lumbago.
Another wave of soldiers on their way. John knows this fight is lost, and after getting his family to their horse to escape, he says his final goodbyes before facing his fate.
Hey, come on. Now listen. Jack, darling, get on this horse. Get out of here. Go find a place to hide.
You're coming with us, Pa.
I'll catch up. You keep riding and don't look back. And don't be worrying about me, you hear? Now get going.
You stay out of trouble, John.
Ain't no trouble, Abigail. Ain't no trouble. I love you.
I love you.
Now go! Get!
His family discovering his body soon after, they lay him and Uncle to rest on a hill overlooking Beecher's Hope.
Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie where the coyotes wail and the wind blows free. And when I die, don't bury me 'neath the western sky on the lone prairie.
The strange man was right. It was a fine spot indeed. The game will now skip ahead 3 years, and Abigail Marston has now passed and is put to rest beside John. We now take control of Jack Marston and can continue playing the game, wrapping up any strangers missions we had left, clearing up any challenges, or just doing whatever we want. Uniquely, the dialogue and interactions for Strangers missions are different depending on whether you do them as John or Jack, which is a nice touch. But the story isn't done yet. While it's labeled as a Strangers mission, this is technically the final mission of the game before the credits roll. On a mission of revenge, Jack first heads to Blackwater and speaks to Agent Howard Sawicki, inquiring on where he can find Edgar Ross. He points Jack to Lake Don Julio to speak to Ross's wife, Emily. She tells him that her husband and his brother are out hunting near Rio del Toro. And after speaking to Philip Ross, he tells Jack he can find his brother just a little ways down the river. And finally confronting Edgar Ross, Jack gets revenge for his family.
Slow down. Good. Excuse me. You Edgar Ross?
Do I know you?
Forgive me for startling you, sir. I have a message for you. My name is Jack Marston. You knew my father.
I see. I remember your father.
I've come for you, Ross.
And you, boy, have sure as shit found me.
You killed my father.
Your father killed himself with the life he lived.
You killed him. I saw you.
You keep saying that.
You sent him to do your dirty work. Then you shot him like a dog.
And I'll shoot you like one too, you little piece of trash. Now get out of here before I kill you as well.
I ain't going nowhere, old man.
Like John Marston once said, people don't forget. Nothing is forgiven. And just like John, Edgar Ross would have to atone for his past too. And that was Red Dead Redemption. We still got the excellent Undead Nightmare DLC to go over, but I'm going to save that for a future video somewhere down the line. And oh yeah, there's multiplayer. I remember that being fun. But yeah, I never go in depth about multiplayer in these videos. I think it goes without saying, but the first Red Dead Redemption still holds up almost 15 years later. John Marston is a great character, an honorable man who is rough around the edges, but tries to atone for his past mistakes. Regardless of whether or not you feel he could ever truly earn redemption for all he's done, it's still tragic to see him die defending his family. And more so that his son, Jack, ended up just like him, despite wanting him to be better. Though we don't really explore Jack's character after killing Ross, and when we did get Red Dead Redemption 2, it ended up being a prequel and not a continuation. Though if you take that Easter egg from GTA 5 as canon, maybe Jack did avoid the outlaw life, become a writer, and wrote a book detailing the adventures of John. I mean, he only killed the man who killed his father, and Ross was an asshole, so it's not like he didn't have it coming. So we don't know if he just decided to go around robbing trains, or killing innocent people too after this. While the game is still as good as I remember, there were a few issues that were apparent, especially after playing the prequel. I won't go over all my points again, but its story structure leans too heavily on GTA's framework. Most characters who help John just disappear after you're done doing missions for them, and their stories are never followed up on. Honestly, it would have been nice to have small moments where Jack can interact with the people John worked with, find out how much good his father did, or learn what they're up to now after the time skip. This section in Mexico can feel hit and miss, due to John's lack of urgency in the whole revolution plot, and because he makes no progress in finding Bill and Javier until right at the end. Javier feels too flat, and like he was thrown in at the last minute. The final portion at Beecher's Hope could have been handled better. It's only like 9 missions, but I can see a lot of players getting bored and wanting the game to end already. Certain mechanics like getting a horse, hunting, and herb gathering feel too simple and not very fleshed out. Of course, I feel like they went too hard in the other direction in the prequel for certain mechanics, so maybe it's more of a me problem. I really enjoyed coming back to this setting, and doing this video on it. And honestly, I might still prefer the original over Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm not going to get too into it, since that's its own video. But while I liked Red Dead 2, there was a lot that felt superfluous, too scripted, and with an epilogue that felt way too long. But I haven't played the game since it was first released, and now that it's out on PC, mods seem to have fixed a lot of the more annoying issues, so maybe my opinion of it could change after another playthrough. To sum up my thoughts, Red Dead Redemption is still a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. It reinvented what a cowboy video game could be, showed that the GTA formula isn't limited to the modern day, and created a great story with an ending fans will never forget. And that's the video. Thanks for watching, and special thanks to my $5 channel members and patrons with their names on screen right now. And special thanks to my $10 channel members and patrons, including Alfred Correa, Chicken D Samurai, Miles Garrett, Primary, and Skill Pews. If you're interested in becoming a channel member or a patron on my Patreon, you can support me for as low as $3 a month, which will give you early access to future videos and to uncut versions too. As more people join, I plan to do members-only polls too, to vote on what games to cover next, and eventually some exclusive videos too. I'm trying to cut down on my reliance on YouTube ad revenue and sponsorships, so any help you can provide is greatly appreciated. I've got another smaller video after this one coming out, and after that I'll probably take a tiny break to relax before moving on to the next big video. Since it worked out so great the first time, I plan to stream again soon. I'm going to change out the stream layout so you guys can actually see the chat while I'm playing, and I might try a couple different games during that stream. Keep an eye on the community tab to know the next time I plan to stream. I'm going to keep this outro short, so again, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment down below. Did you play the first Red Dead Redemption? Which is your favorite in the series? And do you want me to cover the sequel soon? Let me know. I'm hoping to reach 100k subs by the end of the year, so if you're new to the channel, I'd love your support and if you subscribed. Check out the recommended video here at the end, or the playlist of my GTA videos. I'm FuzzySlippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.